Hello, welcome to my channel. I have not done a Deadly Days in a while, so we are here for that. Yeah, it's just, I'm having a rough time with depression, so I haven't really been motivated to do much of anything, but we're here, we're gonna do it. I have it written, we're gonna go through it. Alright, ready? Okay. On November 5th of 2017, Devin Kelly shot and killed 26 people and wounded 22 others at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. Kelly was subsequently shot and wounded and then killed himself. It is the deadliest mass shooting in Texas history and the deadliest at an American place of worship, surpassing the Charleston church shooting of 2015. In 2021, a federal judge ruled that the federal government was negligent and awarded victims and families nearly $250 million. The 26-year-old Kelly should not have been allowed to purchase or possess firearms and ammunition because of a prior domestic violence conviction and a court-martial while in the United States Air Force. However, he was still able to buy the weapons because the Air Force did not report the conviction. In response, Congress passed new legislation that addressed gaps in background check reporting procedures. A few minutes after 11 a.m., Kelly arrived in a white SUV at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs. Around 11:20 a.m., Kelly stepped out of the SUV, wearing black tactical gear, a ballistic vest, and a black face mask featuring a white skull, and wielding a Ruger AR-556 semi-automatic rifle. He approached the church from the right, opening fire on and killing 2 people outside the church, and continuing to fire on the building itself. He then entered the sanctuary through a right side door where worshipers were attending regular Sunday service. Also, there's going to be some explicit language coming up. Just fair warning. After entering, Kelly yelled, "Everybody dies, motherfuckers," as he proceeded up and down the center aisle and shot at people in the pews. Police found 15 empty magazines capable of holding 30 rounds each. Authorities stated Kelly fired approximately 450 rounds during the estimated 11-minute-long shooting. That's a lot. According to investigators, the shooting was captured on a camera set up at the back of the church to record regular services for uploading online. The footage shows Kelly methodically shooting the victims, pausing only to reload his rifle. Kelly was then confronted by and traded fire with Stephen Williford, a local resident and former firearms instructor who was armed with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. Williford had taken cover behind a truck across the street from the church and shot Kelly twice, once in the leg and once in the upper left torso under his tactical gear. Kelly, who had dropped his rifle during the initial firefight with Williford, fired back with a handgun before fleeing in his Ford Explorer. Williford fired one more round as Kelly sped north on FM 539. Williford then noticed a pickup truck pulled up to the intersection of 4th Street and FM 539 driven by Johnny Langendorf. Williford approached and entered Langendorf's truck on the passenger side. They then pursued Kelly at high speed for about 5 to 7 minutes. According to Langendorf, they drove at speeds up to 95 miles per hour. While chasing Kelly, the men called police dispatch to report the route and direction of the chase, assuming the police were headed toward the church. During the chase, Kelly called his wife and spoke to her and his parents, informing them, quote, "I just shot up the Sutherland Springs Church," end quote, and telling his father that he was injured and thought he would not survive. Kelly repeatedly emphasized how sorry he was. Bleeding from his injuries, Kelly soon lost control of his vehicle, hitting a road sign before crossing a bar ditch at the Hartfield-Sandy Elm Road intersection, and finally stopping about 30 feet into the field on the opposite side. Williford and Langendorf observed that he was motionless, and police took over the scene when they arrived. Police found Kelly dead in his car with 3 gunshot wounds, including a self-inflicted head wound. 2 handguns were found in the vehicle, a Glock 19 and a Ruger SR-22 caliber, both of which Kelly had purchased. The attack occurred during the church's Sunday service. 26 people were killed and 22 others were injured. The dead comprised 10 women, 7 men, 7 girls, 1 boy, and an unborn child. 23 died inside the church, 2 outside, and 1 in a hospital. The oldest victim was 77. One victim was the 14-year-old daughter of church pastor Frank Pomeroy, who had not been at the church on the day of the attack. Visiting Pastor Brian Holcomb died with 8 family members, including an unborn child. The injured victims were taken to Connolly Memorial Medical Center in Floresville University Hospital in San Antonio, and Brooke Army Medical Center at Fort Sam, Houston. One of the wounded victims, Chris Workman, was shot twice and paralyzed from the waist down. The list of victims includes the following: 62-year-old Keith Allen Braden, 51-year-old Robert Michael Corrigan, 51-year-old Shani Louise Corrigan, 7-year-old Emily Garcia, 11-year-old Emily Rose Hill, 13-year-old Gregory Lynn Hill, 9-year-old Megan Gale Hill, Carlin Bright Holcomb, who wasn't born yet, Crystal Mare Holcomb, 8 months pregnant, 36, 60-year-old John Brian Holcomb, 58, Carla Plain Holcomb, 36-year-old Mark Daniel Holcomb, 1-year-old Noah Holcomb, 77-year-old Dennis Neal Johnson Sr., 68, Sarah Johns Johnson, 16-year-old Haley Kruger, 56-year-old Karen Sue Marshall, 56-year-old Robert Scott Marshall, 33-year-old Tara E. McNutty, 14-year-old Annabelle Renee Pomeroy, 64-year-old Richard Cordona Rodriguez, 66-year-old Teresa Sagan Rodriguez, 5-year-old Brooke Brian Ward, 30-year-old Joanne Lockingville Ward, 56-year-old Peggy Lynn Warden, and 71-year-old Lula Walzinski White. The Texas Rangers led the investigation, with the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Farms, and Explosives, ATF, assisting. Investigators initially said the shooting was not racially or religiously motivated, rather by a dispute with Kelly's mother-in-law. There was no indication that anyone other than Kelly was involved in the shooting. Devin Patrick Kelly was raised in New Braunfels, Texas, about 35 miles from Sutherland Springs, and attended New Braunfels High School. At New Braunfels High, Kelly had a lengthy disciplinary record, which included 7 suspensions for falsifying records, insubordination, profanity, and a drug-related offense. One former high school classmate described him as an outcast, but not a loner, who was popular among other outcasts. However, a martial arts instructor who taught Kelly during that time said Kelly signed up for his class because he was being bullied and that he did not fit in. Kelly graduated in 2009 with a 2.32 grade point average and a ranking of 260 out of 393 students in his class. A close friend from middle school through high school recalled, "He was always a psychopath, though," and that, quote, "over the years, we all saw him change into something that he wasn't," end quote. Honestly, I personally think, like, it probably was just starting to show at that point, but that's not really something that just kind of develops. They're already like that. Sociopathy isn't something that you catch. It's always been there. So he was probably always a bit of a psycho and a little bit of a sociopath, but it just didn't catch anyone's attention until his high school years. After graduating, Kelly enlisted in the United States Air Force. He served in logistics readiness at Holloman Air Force Base in New York from 2009 until 2014. He married in April 2011. In October 2012, he was charged with assaulting his wife and fracturing his toddler stepson's skull. In response, Kelly made death threats against the superior officers who charged him, and he was caught sneaking firearms onto Holloman Air Force Base. Around that same time, he made threats of self-harm to a coworker. He was then admitted to Peak Behavioral Health Service, a mental health facility in Santa Teresa, New Mexico. In June 2012, Kelly escaped from Peak Behavioral Health Services, but was soon apprehended 10 miles away at a bus terminal in El Paso, Texas. The facility's director of military affairs later recalled that Kelly had stayed at the facility for several weeks until he was brought to court-martial. While there, he had expressed a desire for some kind of retribution to his chain of command and was discovered to have used computers to order weapons and tactical gear to a P.O. box in San Antonio. Kelly and his wife divorced in October 2012. In an interview with Inside Edition, his ex-wife said she lived in constant fear of him as their marriage was filled with abuse. He once threatened her at gunpoint over a speeding ticket and later threatened to kill her and her entire family. Kelly was brought before a general court-martial on 4 charges: assault on his wife, aggravated assault on his stepson, 2 charges of pointing a loaded gun at his wife, and 2 counts of threatening his wife with an unloaded gun. In November 2012, Kelly pleaded guilty to 2 counts of Article 128 UCMJ for the assault of his wife and stepson. In return, the weapons charges were dropped. He was sentenced to 12 months of confinement and a reduction in rank to Airman Basic. He appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, but was unsuccessful. In 2014, 2014, he was dismissed from the Air Force with a bad conduct discharge. After his release, Kelly returned to New Braunfels, where he lived in a converted barn at his parents' home. Shortly thereafter, he was investigated for sexual assault and rape and for a physical assault on his then-girlfriend. A 2013 statement from the woman who accused Kelly of sexual assault detailed an alleged attack on her. A separate statement from Kelly's first wife, who divorced him in October 2012, said that Kelly had physically abused her during the marriage. The woman wrote, quote, "For a whole year, he slapped me, choked me, kicked me, waterboarded me, and held a gun to my head," end quote. However, the Como County, Texas Sheriff's Office did not bring charges against Kelly, and, quote, "the case became inactive because the victim did not respond to 4 follow-up calls and messages from a Sheriff's Office detective," end quote. On April 4th, 2014, Kelly married his then-girlfriend. The couple moved into a mobile home in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where he was charged in August 2014 for misdemeanor cruelty to animals after beating his malnourished husky. It's just a ray of sunshine. He was given a deferred sentence of probation and was ordered to pay restitution and other fees. The charge was dismissed in March 2016 after he completed the sentence. In January 2015, a resident of El Paso County, Colorado, was granted a protection order against him. At the time of the shooting, Kelly was again living at his parents' property in New Braunfels. He reportedly lied about his background to pass a background check and obtain a license from the Texas Department of Public Safety as a security guard and was a security worker at the Summit Vacation and RV Resort in New Braunfels. He had previously worked as an unarmed security guard at the Schlitterbahn Water Park and Resort in New Braunfels, but was fired less than 6 weeks on the job. While he was working at the Summit Vacation and RV Resort, a family who encountered him commented how creepy Kelly had seemed. One member described, quote, "He seemed angry. He seemed annoyed by us, and he seemed like he wanted to exert some authority," end quote. On the night of October 31st, less than a week before the shooting, Kelly attended a festival at the First Baptist Church wearing all black. According to 2 parishioners who were at the festival, he acted so strangely that people had to keep an eye on him. One also examined him to make sure he was not carrying a firearm. According to a former Air Force colleague who temporarily got reacquainted with him online, Kelly claimed he would buy dogs and other animals and use them for target practice. He also expressed his obsession with mass murders, including the Charleston church shooting, and joked about committing one himself. These comments prompted her to block him on Facebook. Kelly's estranged second wife sometimes attended First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs with her family. Prior to the shooting, he sent threatening text messages to her mother. His wife and her mother were not at the church when the attack occurred, but he killed his wife's grandmother at the church. Kelly attended the First Baptist Church in Kingsville, Texas from May to June 2014 and volunteered as a helper for 1 day of Vacation Bible School. Later on, he stopped volunteering at the summer Bible class and became vocally anti-Christian, posting about atheism online. In social media posts, Kelly often tried to preach his atheism, described people who believed in God as stupid. His posts and online hate speech causing numerous former classmates to delete him as a friend on Facebook and expressed an interest in church shootings. In 2012, Kelly purchased 2 guns, a European American Armory Vindicator, 38 caliber revolver, and a 9mm Sig Sauer P250 pistol from the HAFB Base Exchange. Kelly later purchased 4 guns, including a 9mm Glock 19, a 22 caliber Ruger SR22, a Ruger GP100, 37 Magnum revolver, and a Ruger AR-50 .556 rifle at stores in Colorado and Texas between 2014 and 2017. On October 29th, a week before the shooting, he posted a photo of what appeared to be a Ruger model AR-556 rifle on his Facebook profile. A Ruger AR-556 rifle was used in the attack, and 2 handguns were found in Kelly's vehicle. First of all, if you all know, he's cuckoo bananas, right? Why did nobody report those photos? Nobody thought, this is probably somebody that should not have a gun. I'm just saying. Kelly purchased the semi-automatic rifle used in the shooting from an Academy Sports and Outdoor store in San Antonio on April 7, 2016. He filled out the required ATF Form 4473 and falsely indicated that he did not have a disqualifying criminal history, which he did. In Texas, an FBI National Instant Criminal Background Check System, NICS, check is required at the time of the purchase for all firearms except for purchasers with a valid license to carry a handgun. The state of Texas denied his application for a license to carry a handgun. No license of any kind is required to purchase for firearms under Texas state law. Kelly's general court-martial guilty plea should have made it illegal for him to own, buy, or possess a firearm or ammunition. The conviction should have been flagged by NICS and prevented the purchase. Federal law prohibits those convicted of domestic violence, even if it is only a misdemeanor, from possessing firearms. However, the Air Force failed to relay the court-martial convictions to the FBI. In a statement admitting the oversight, the Air Force said, initial information indicates that Kelly's domestic violence offense was not entered into the National Crime Information Center, NCIC, database by the Holloman Air Force Base Office of Special Investigations. One day after the shooting, the Air Force said it had launched a review of how the service handled the criminal records of a former airman, Devin P. Kelly, following his 2012 domestic violence conviction. 3 days after the shooting, Vice President Mike Pence visited the crime scene and said, quote, "We will find why this information was not properly recorded in 2012, and we will work with leaders in Congress to ensure that this never happens again," end quote. In 2018, the family of a couple who were murdered in the shooting filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas against the U.S. Air Force and the Department of Defense, alleging they were negligent in reporting Kelly's criminal history, which would have prevented him from purchasing firearms. In 2021, U.S. District Judge Xavier Rodriguez ruled that the federal government's negligence was mostly responsible for the shooting and that it was jointly and severely liable for the damages that may be awarded. He later awarded damages of more than $230 million to survivors and victims' families. The shooting brought attention to gaps in reporting to the federal background check system intended to ban convicted domestic abusers, such as Kelly, from purchasing guns. Since 1996, the Lautenberg Amendment has prohibited the sale of firearms to those convicted of domestic abuse offenses, even misdemeanors, but gaps in reporting continue to exist. After the shooting, the building ceased to function as a church and was kept as a memorial to the victims. A new church, about 4 times larger, was built next door on the same block. Congregation authorities argued the old building was a painful reminder and voted in 2021 to remove it. Some of the victims' families were against the idea, and they issued a lawsuit to stop the destruction. In early July 2024, a judge issued a temporary restraining order to halt the demo. However, another judge later denied a request to extend that order, setting in motion the demolition. On August 12, 2024, crews began dismantling the building. A member of the community who was against the demolition observed, quote, "The devil got his way. That was God's house," end quote. Conspiracy theories circulated at the hospital where victims were being treated. According to the Washington Post, a group of women who said they knew the victims were overheard discussing the shooting as a false flag operation designed to manipulate the public towards some nefarious end. The Post reporter was removed from the hospital by police. The misinformation mirrored similar conspiracy theories of the Las Vegas shooting a few weeks earlier, in which perpetrator Stephen Paddock was falsely linked to leftist and Islamist groups. In 2018, 2 conspiracy theorists, Jody Mann and Robert Ussery, were arrested after accusing the church's pastor, whose daughter was killed in the shooting. Both were charged with trespassing and resisting arrest, and Ussery was also charged with making a terroristic threat and possession of marijuana. Mann and Ussery denied that the massacre occurred and instead promote, quote, "false flag," end quote, conspiracy notions on the internet, asserting that the Sutherland Spring attacks and other attacks were orchestrated for political purposes. We know that's not the case. It's very sad. A lot of people died. People that didn't have to die because of a mistake that was made. And while it is a mistake, and I understand that, it really calls a lot of attention towards, the gaps in reporting and why we have these rules. And it goes to show, too, that, guns are not the problem. People are the problem. Because even if you don't have access to firearms, they're still going to find a way. And that's sad. So that was the very sad story of the Sutherland Springs First Baptist Church shooting. As always, please don't do anything I wouldn't do. Make good choices and be friendly, be cautiously friendly to others. And I will see you all next week. Bye.